This is part 2 of the read-along for Unit 3.10, Post-Impressionism 2. Two Post-Impressionists. A New Direction. Gauguin began developing his own style, one that was more abstract than that of the Impressionists. He believed in painting from imagination rather than copying what was really in front of him. In a method he referred to as synthetism, Gauguin used line, shape, and color to synthesize observations of nature with an emotional response to what he saw. Shapes on canvas didn't have to look realistic. It was more important to capture the impact of real images on his memory. Don't paint from nature too much, he said. Art is an abstraction. Derive this abstraction from nature while dreaming before it, and think more of the creation that will result. So he starts developing his own style. He's moving away from the Impressionists. He likes things that are more abstract, meaning less realistic. He believed in painting from his imagination rather than just painting what he sees in front of him. So he's not trying to show you what the world really looks like. He's trying to show you sort of what the world looks like plus his emotional response to it. In a method that he referred to as synthetism, Gauguin used line, shape, and color to synthesize or bring together observations of nature with an emotional response to what he saw. So he's trying to show you what he sees and how he feels at the same time. Shapes on a canvas didn't have to look realistic. It was more important to capture the impact of real images on his memory. So we don't have to create paintings that look really realistic as if they're photographs. We need to create paintings that let people know how we feel about what we're seeing and what we're painting. So he said, don't paint from nature too much. Art is an abstraction. Derive this abstraction from nature, meaning get inspired by nature, and then derive this from nature while dreaming before it. So be in nature, look at nature, but also use your imagination, and you will get that abstraction from nature, and you can think more of the creation that will result. So don't think about painting something that looks really realistic. Think about blending your imagination plus what you're seeing into the creation that will result, meaning the painting that he's going to make. In Search of Paradise. Gauguin became increasingly disenchanted with Impressionism and the commercial Paris art scene. He began searching for a place to live away from the pressures of urban life, where he could focus exclusively on painting the beautiful landscapes of his dreams. In France, he traveled to Brittany, and then to Arles, where he had his brief, tempestuous stay with Vincent van Gogh. But he had little success in selling his paintings and struggled to survive. So he's becoming disenchanted with Impressionism and the commercial Paris art scene, meaning he's falling out of love with that, right? He's starting to see that it's not what he thought it was, it's not how he wants it to be, and so he wants to find something else. He began to search for a place to live away from the pressures of urban life, so he wants to be out of the city, where he can focus exclusively on painting the beautiful landscapes of his dreams. He tried living in Brittany. He tried going to Arles, where he stayed with Van Gogh for a brief, meaning short, tempestuous, meaning they didn't get along very well, stay with Vincent van Gogh. But he wasn't selling his paintings, and he was struggling to make ends meet and make enough money to survive. In 1891, he sailed to the French colony of Tahiti in the South Pacific. He hoped that he could exist for next to nothing there while living off the land. But he didn't know how to farm and was forced to buy expensive canned food. He also found, to his disappointment, that the picturesque island was already under the influence of Western culture. In Tahiti, however, Gauguin's approach to painting took a new direction. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to leave France. I'm going to sail to this French colony in the South Pacific and I'm going to live off the land. It'll be really cheap and I can just grow my own food and, eat bananas from the trees or whatever he was thinking. But then when he got there, he realized, okay, I don't actually know how to live off the land. And so he had to buy expensive canned food. And he was also disappointed by the fact that Western culture, so French culture, was already coming in and influencing Tahiti. But his painting did start to take a new direction while he was there. Imagining Eden. Gauguin lived in a grass hut and wrote about island life for months before ever putting a brush to canvas. Then, instead of painting the reality that was before him, he depicted the heaven on earth of his imagination, the Tahiti he'd been looking for. His dreamy landscapes of deep blues, lush greens, vibrant reds and yellows, and harmonious shapes were populated with innocent islanders unspoiled by the corruption of the outside world. So, he goes to Tahiti, he lives in a grass hut, and he writes about living on the island for months before he ever tries to paint living on the island. Whenever he does decide to finally paint his life on the island, he decides that he's going to paint it the way he wished it would be when he got there. We said earlier he was disappointed when he got there because the island was already under the influence of Western culture. And so he's like, I'm going to paint this island the way I wanted it to be when I came here. And that's what he did. He used deep blues, lush greens, vibrant or bright reds and yellows, and harmonious shapes that were populated with innocent islanders unspoiled by the corruption of the outside world. So he's trying to show us these people living on this island outside of modern European society. La Orana Maria, Hail Mary, is one of the first paintings that Gauguin made in Tahiti. He painted Mary and Jesus as Tahitians here, reflecting the fact that missionaries had converted the inhabitants to Catholicism. A dark-haired angel with golden wings reveals a vision of Mary and Jesus to two women as they approach, with hands folded in prayer. Dressed in a cotton garment called a pareu, Mary holds her son on her shoulders. Mary and Jesus both gaze at the viewer. Intrigued by religious beliefs, Gauguin incorporated symbolism to give the painting a feeling of mystery. So here we have the dark-haired angel, the two women approaching that are clasping their hands in prayer. And we have the Tahitian version of Mary and Jesus. Missionaries had come to Tahiti and converted the inhabitants, the people who lived there, to Catholicism, so the Catholic religion. So he's reflecting the fact that these Western missionaries had come here and converted the people who lived in Tahiti to Catholicism, but he's still keeping their sort of simple island life in the way that he painted them. In La Orana Maria, Gauguin painted verdant, flowering trees and shrubs, tropical palms, and in the foreground, bowls overflowing with fruit. He used simplified, organic shapes with strong outlines. Instead of copying the energetic brushwork of the Impressionists and other post-Impressionists, Gauguin filled the shapes with smooth strokes of color. The color is bold and imaginative with a tropical flavor. So he painted verdant meaning green, flowering trees and shrubs, tropical palms, and in the foreground, the front, bowls overflowing with fruit. He used simplified organic shapes, meaning simple shapes that are not geometric. Organic meaning like sort of found in nature. So like the shape of a leaf would be very organic versus the shape of a cube or a pyramid, which is very geometric and man-made. Instead of copying the energetic brushwork of the Impressionists and Post-Impressionists, he filled his shapes with smooth strokes of color. So you can see that the color in his painting is a lot smoother than when we're going to talk about Van Gogh. But his color is still bold and imaginative with a tropical flavor. Keeping in mind how Gauguin felt about native life in Tahiti, what emotion do you think he wished to convey through his use of line, shape, and color? What do you think he wanted you to feel? What emotion do you think he wanted you to feel whenever he was making his paintings and choosing his colors? Explore La Orana Maria activity on the next screen to examine the painting more closely. La Orana Maria, Hail Mary, one of the first paintings that Gauguin made in Tahiti, reflects Gauguin's interest in religion. A dark-haired angel with golden wings reveals a vision of Mary and Jesus to two women whose hands are folded in prayer. Gauguin depicts Mary and Jesus as Tahitians, reflecting the fact that missionaries had converted the inhabitants of the island to Catholicism. Gauguin's use of symbolism gives the painting a feeling of mystery. So Gauguin uses color in a bold and imaginative way. The Tahitian women walk on a blue path touched with pinks and greens. The distant fields are creamy yellow, orange, and pink, and palm trunks take on blue hues. So he's using color in a way that's not very realistic, but it sort of plays into what he felt about color and emotion and symbolism. He created simplified organic shapes outlined with strong lines and filled with smooth color. The lines, abstracted shapes, and colors created decorative, patterned composition. How does the combination of color, line, and shape affect the mood of the painting? So all of these elements come together to create a decorative kind of patterned composition. So these leaves sort of make a pattern. The lines of the palm trunks make a pattern. All of these elements that he's using sort of come together and create that feeling. Here you can kind of see the a close-up of the bowls that are overflowing with fruit that sort of show how prosperous the island is, how much abundance of food there is. And then there's a close-up view of the top of a tree here, where you can kind of see the way that he painted it and the pattern that he built.